Welcome to the Xylem Virtual Training Series. I'm David Stover, Technical Training Manager for Xylem Industrial Solutions. Today we're going to be working on an ESH. Now the ESH is a horizontal in-suction centrifugal pump, and we're going to be doing a seal replacement on the shaft. Now for all this literature that we've got here, this is our installation and operation manual, and then we also have a repair parts manual. Now you can find both of these online at Goulds.com. Simply go to Goulds.com and then put in a search for ESH, as we see right here in our model number, and then it'll bring you to the literature section and you can get both of these. The repair parts section shows you all the parts, including the seal kit that we're going to use today. And then the installation and operation manual will give you full instructions on how to disassemble and reassemble the unit. Now before we get started, one of the key things that we want to make sure that we do is we want to make sure that we've got all of our safety equipment in place. This is a fabricated stainless steel pump, and so it has sharp edges on the inside. So we want to make sure that we use cut-free gloves so that we don't injure our hands. And then we also want to make sure that we're using our safety glasses to protect our eyes. Now if your pump is in service and it's been used in operation, the next thing you want to make sure that you do is you want to lock out, tag out the electricity on this. We don't want anybody turning the pump on for any reason while we're working on it. So make sure that you lock out the power and tag it so that nobody else turns it back on. So with that, now let's take our pump apart and we'll start replacing our seal. To begin with, the first thing that we're going to have to do is we're going to take our casing, our volute, off of the pump right here. Now you'll see that there's Allen head screws, and you're going to need to go in there and break these loose. They're going to be tight. So we break these loose all the way around on the pump, and then we'll use a speed wrench in order to get them all the way out. So we get our last bolt out. We're going to take this out, set this aside, and then in some cases your casing or your volute here is going to be stuck or to be tight to get off. In that case, you're going to take a small rubber mallet, that's this, and then bump it on the discharge here, and you'll see that it'll come loose. Now this comes out. We can do an inspection on the inside of the casing here, and we'll see everything looks good and clean. Here's our suction inlet right here and our discharge out the top. Our flange here looks good. We don't see any dents, dings, or anything in there. So we can take this at this point and set this aside. Now we're looking at our impeller right here. So we've got our impeller. Here's our casing gasket, our casing O-ring right here. Okay, we'll take a look at that and we'll inspect it. The next thing that we've got to do is we've got to take our impeller off of the shaft. Now it's got a locking bolt or nut right here on the top that we're going to have to take loose. Now, if you're in a shop, you may have an impact wrench that you can use to take that off with. If you don't, if you're in the field, what you may end up doing is you can take a socket as this and then place this on this nut right here. And then if you can't hold it, you may use a strap wrench around the outside of the impeller. We never want to grab a hold of the eye of the impeller right here or this skirt with a pair of pliers or a pipe wrench or anything like that. That'll bend this, it'll destroy it. You won't be able to use it after that. So use a soft strap wrench around the outside if possible, if you don't have an impact wrench. What you may have to do in some cases is go to the opposite end of the motor down here and pull this cover off and go to the shaft and lock the shaft in position on that so you can hold it still. In some cases what you can do is you can simply take a wrench and a hammer, and we're going to hold this. I'm going to hold my impeller, and I'm going to hold a little pressure on my ratchet here, and then give it a tap, and it begins to turn, and now I can get this loose. So now I've got my impeller nut loose. Let's take this off. So there's my impeller locking nut. We remove that, set this aside with our other parts. Our impeller now, this slides off. If it doesn't slide off easily, what you may end up doing is you'll take two screwdrivers as such, and then come in from opposite sides and gently work it back out from the bottom and try to give it a little bit of pressure to move. Once the impeller begins to move, it usually will slide all the way off. So we get the impeller off right here. We take a look at our impeller. Now we want to make sure that we keep our shaft key. We'll have a shaft key right here. But here's my impeller. This is in good shape. Now, one of the things that we're going to have to replace is going to be this O-ring. There's an O-ring on the inside right here. And we're going to replace this. We replace that mechanical seal. So there's that O-ring right there. And we'll see that I use this little screwdriver, pull that up, pull that out, and we're going to set the impeller to the side, and we're going to set that O-ring to the side. Here's my mechanical seal. Now the mechanical seal comes out with this sleeve right here. Now we'll see that it's on a sleeve. Now inside this sleeve there's also an O-ring right here. Now this is to be replaced also when we replace the mechanical seal. So I'm going to take my little screwdriver right here and just roll in behind it and lift this out. And there's my O-ring for my shaft sleeve right here. So we'll set this aside also. Now at this point here, I'm going to take and pull my old mechanical seal off of my shaft sleeve right there. And we can set this to the side. There's the carbon ring that goes with that. That came off. We're going to replace all of that. So we set our shaft sleeve to the side. Now we're going to pull our seal housing out, this part right here. And we'll see our stationary unit on the inside right here. Now the stationary unit has to come out. And we can take that and we're going to push on it from the outside here and see if we can get that to push out. Now if we can't get it to push out, what we'll do with this is we'll find a socket or we'll take a screwdriver, because again we're replacing it. I'm going to place this right on the edge right here and give it a gentle bump, and out it comes. So that's come out. We inspect our area right here where this has to go back in, make sure that it's clean, make sure there's no debris and no damage inside there. So we can set this to the side. Here's our stationary element from our old mechanical seal. We'll put that with the old piece. That way we can return that to the customer and let them go. So now that we've got the pump completely disassembled, now we want to do an inspection of our pump shaft. Make sure everything is clean there. If we find any debris on the shaft, anything at all, we'll take some emery cloth and we'll come in here and we'll just work it around this shaft in order to clean it up. We want to get this nice and smooth. We want to get it nice and shiny. We've got to be perfectly smooth so that it doesn't catch on that shaft sleeve when we put this back together. Additionally, we're going to check this key slot right here. Make sure that it's clean. If that key slot's got any debris in it, take a wire brush, a small brush like this, and work it back and forth. Clean that out all the way up into the corners so that that key is able to slide in with no problem and no resistance. We get all this together. Now we've got our parts cleaned up. We can start to put our assembly back together. Now we're going to start our reassembly of our unit. And the place that we're going to start with our stationary seal holder right here, seal housing. And we're going to unpack our mechanical seal. Now in this case we're using a 10K27 mechanical seal. We open this up and we pull the seal out. We'll see that it's wrapped and packaged for us. Now, we want to avoid touching the seal faces as much as possible. Now, we'll see here, here's my stationary unit. We'll set that to the side right here for the moment. And it has this small cardboard disc. We want to save that by all means. This is important. We'll use this to help push that stationary unit in. Here's my rotating assembly here. We're going to keep this. We're going to set this to the side for right now because we'll put that in the next steps. So at this point here, unwrap the stationary unit. And again, we'll try to avoid touching the seal face right here. Now the seal face, we'll see this black, this is a shiny, hard carbon material. Okay, and this stands up to our resistance and our abrasion very, very well. And what we do with that is we install it in here, but we have to be careful with it because it's so hard, it gets very, very brittle. It can chip, it can crack, it can absolutely break in half. So we've got to be gentle with it as we put it together. Now, one of the things that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to lubricate this rubber cup on the outside right here. We got to lubricate this, and then we have to lubricate the socket that it goes into right here. Because right now I have a dry rubber cup that I'm going to try to push into this dry stainless steel housing that it's going to fit in, and it's just not going to want to slide. So for my lubrication, I'm going to set this to the side, and I've got this P80 Lube that we use right here. Now there's several different types of lubrication that you can use. This one right here we found to work pretty well for this application. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to put just a drop right down on the inside right here. Set that to the side. Then I can take my glove, my finger, and just wipe it around so that I get a coating all the way around. Doesn't have to be a whole bunch, just enough to make it wet. Now I'm going to take the same and I'm going to apply it to the outside of the rubber right here so that I've got just a little bit on there to provide lubrication so this dry rubber will slide inside that dry metal receptacle on that seal housing. So we get this done. Now I'm going to set this in there as such and try to get it as level as possible. Now this is where we take this little cardboard disc that came with it. We're going to set that on the face so that we're not touching on the face, not pressing on that. We use this as a protector. We're going to push this down in there. It doesn't take a lot of pressure because we've got it lubricated. We want to press it in and make sure that it's even all the way around the diameter of it. We push our cardboard off. We can set that aside, do an inspection of it, look at it front and back. If we look at it on the back side, and we're looking at this black rubber ring right here and making sure that it's seated all the way down, so is the carbon ring, and we'll see this is the same all the way through. So that's a good install. We've got that in place. We're ready to move forward. So at this point here, we're going to take this, place this over our shaft. Well, before I put that on, one thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and wipe my seal face down. I want to clean it real quick just to make sure that it's good and there's nothing gotten on there from manufacturing or from shipping or anything else. So I've got an alcohol swab. We use an alcohol pad like this. Lens cleaner pad, alcohol pad, something along this line. Something that cleans and will dry, evaporate relatively quick. So we're just going to take this and wipe it real fast. Get that cleaned off. Make sure that we've got it. Everything looks good. We don't see any fingerprints. And it evaporates real quickly. Now take this, put this in, being very careful not to bump that carbon ring because I don't want to chip it or break it. We got it into position there. Next we move on to our rotating assembly. So here's my rotating assembly right here, and then here is my shaft sleeve. Now remember we took the O-ring out of here and we have to replace the O-ring on my shaft sleeve. So I got my O-ring kit right here. Take this out and get my O-rings that I'm going to use. And here's my O-ring for the shaft sleeve. I'm just going to simply insert it down inside here. Get it into position. I'm going to take my little screwdriver right here and just lightly seat it, run it around, and make sure that's seated into position inside. So I've got this. Now I want to inspect the outside part. Make sure this is clean. Make sure that we don't have any debris on it. Make sure there's no scratches, no cuts or anything like that. If we have any burrs or anything like that, any defects, we either replace this or we at least clean it off. If I have a small burr or anything on that, I can take emery cloth, I can sand that down and get it nice and smooth because this is where our seal face is going to ride right here. We can't have anything that will cut that seal on the inside. And the part that we've got to protect is this inner part right here. We have elastomers in here, rubber pieces in here, that's going to ride on that just like that. So we've got to make sure that that's nice and clean. So at this point here, what we're going to do is we want to clean. Again, we're going to clean our shaft sleeve. I'm going to wipe this down on the outside so that it's going on to a nice clean sleeve. Make sure that my seal doesn't get anything in there. Set that to the side. I want to do the same thing to the inside right here. I want to clean this. Make sure it's cleaned up in there. Clean my face right here real good. Just wipe it down. Make sure there's nothing left on there. Now I'm going to take this, put this back together. We're going to put a little bit of lubricant on the outside of our shaft sleeve. Once again, make it easier for that seal to slide onto that shaft. We're going to put that on all the way around. Make sure you get this beveled lip right here real good, because that's the part that's going to engage the seal first. Use a little bit on the inside right here. Make sure that that rubber elastomer is lubricated real good before it goes together. Now at this point here, we're going to take this. So we push this down and we get this to seat. Now we see it slide all the way down and we got movement in it. So we're going to pick this up. We can see we've got this on here. We leave it back a little bit because this is going to fit right down onto my shaft right here. So this slides onto the shaft all the way in, and then see, this is going to push down. The spring is going to compress with the pressure from the impeller when we tighten the impeller up. So now at this point right here, I'm going to set my key back into my shaft right here. That goes right there. Rotate this around, get that key right up to the top so we don't have to fight with it. Now the next thing we've got to do is we've got to service our impeller. Now remember that we took the O-ring out of the face of our impeller right here. So we've got our O-ring, a replacement O-ring, goes right here. We're just going to set that right down inside, and we'll see that it goes right there. That sets just like that. Now from here, we're going to take this, and we're going to gently slide this up on that shaft, and we're going to get that key in the key slot in the impeller. Push this down. This should seat all the way in. Then we're going to take our impeller lock nut that we removed. This goes on right here. We're going to take our socket and ratchet, tighten this up, and just like the way we took it off, we can take this and hold this into position like such. Hold this down, push it, make sure it's seated all the way to the bottom, and give it a few good whacks with the hammer like that, and now we've got that locked into position. So now we've got the seal replaced. We've replaced all of our O-rings. We'll do a visual inspection of my casing O-ring right here. Make sure that it's in good shape, that we don't have any cuts, any nicks, or anything on it. So we can take that, we can roll that off, and we're going to do an inspection of it. We're just going to look at it, roll it around, make sure that we don't see any cuts in it. If we find anything wrong with it, then we want to make sure that we replace this right here too. And so this right here looks like it's in good shape. Once again, we're going to bring this up, set it back into position, stretch it over the flange of the casing right here, the motor bracket. And when we put this on, we want to make sure that we stretch it straight and even, and we don't curl or roll it up on there. Because if it rolls on there, it's going to want to unroll back off. And that right there will keep us from being able to get this seated into position. So we'll get it down, get it stretched on, straight and even all the way around, and make sure that it sets all the way back against the flange as such. You see there how it rolls out. Okay, so we got this on. We've got this seated into position all the way around. Now we're going to take our casing, our volute, right here. We're going to do it again, quick inspection, make sure that it's clean inside here. I want to put just a little bit of lubricant so that this right here slides onto this part right here without any issue. Okay? Again, it's dry metal against a dry O-ring right there. So we want to make sure that that slides with no problem. Otherwise, it could cause it to pinch, and it'll pinch that O-ring and push it out of position. Then we'll have a leak. So we take this up, We're going to set this into position, slide it up over, line up our bolt holes for our casing right here. Pinch that together. We're going to put our bolts in. Now we'll assemble our bolts. We'll put these in. We'll run them in by hand. And when we tighten them up, we're going to tighten them in a cross star pattern, just like I'm going right here, so that whenever we tighten them up, they tighten up even and pull the casing down evenly all the way around. We don't want it to get too tight on one side and leave a gap on the other. Okay, so we finish up our screws. We use our speed wrench here to put this together. And then you go around to each of your screws and use your Allen wrench just to snug these up. Make sure that everything is good and tight all the way around, and then that will have your casing all installed from your seal replacement. Now, there's a last final step. What you want to do is you're going to go back with our wrench here, our socket wrench, and reach inside and turn that impeller and make sure that we don't have any rubbing anywhere on the inside and there's no resistance. As long as that's turning good, then you know everything is in alignment. You have no problems on the inside. That concludes our seal replacement on our ESH. Remember, if you have any questions, if you need any information on the ESH, you can go to Goulds.com and search for the ESH, and you can get your owner's manual, installation and operation manual, or the repair parts manual. If you have any additional questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Just reach out to your local Xylem or your Goulds sales representative, and they'll be happy to help you in any way that you need. So thank you for watching our video today. If you need any additional support or you need literature, go to Goulds.com and enter the information in the search bar.